For too many years, families of children with devastating illnesses have felt helpless as they watch their child suffer. Today, they're taking matters into their own hands and finally finding relief treating their child with cannabis. These are their stories.
Welcome to another episode of Love and Cannabis. I am Nina Simmons.
And I am Osiris.
And we are the proud parents of Aiden Stephan.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode.
Hello.
Hey guys, I want to thank you all for tuning in again, and want to also introduce a guest tonight, someone I met about a few years ago during a trade show in New York, and we always stayed in contact. He's a fellow New Yorker now, and it's going to be a good one for tonight. His name is David Hess. He's with Tress Capital, the president of Tress Capital, an investment firm in New York. He comes to us by way of California.
Woohoo!
Transplant.
Nice, welcome.
Coast to coast guy.
That's right.
So,
thank you for having me.
No problem. How do you like being in New York versus California? Because I know beaches is different.
It's different. I'll tell you, it's very different. And although it's nice this time of year, my heart's still in LA. I got to be honest. My family's still out there. So pre-COVID, I would say I was there almost every month or every other month. If it wasn't for business, then it was some kind of family celebration. And like I said, my siblings are out there, and my wife's from LA, and so all her siblings are out there. My oldest is now in college out there, and so unfortunately, it seems like we're going to be stuck in New York a little bit longer because of COVID, but. I do hear planes roaring overhead every so often. I'm not too far from JFK. I'm kind of right by Long Beach, the other Long Beach, New York. So I still get my fix in, to go to the beach when the weather's nice out here. But right, not too far from JFK. So it's nice to hear the roar of those engines. It gives me hope that I'll be able to get back to LA soon.
Oh, yeah. I find that a lot of people that are transplants from California, they come here for maybe a different experience, but their heart is always back in Cali. I noticed that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I came here. I was diagnosed with cancer, and I had looked into dozens of oncologists. It was synovial sarcoma, so it was kind of rare. And I was 20 years old, and whole life ahead of me. And it was one oncologist at Sloan Kettering that said, "Yes, I've seen this before. Come on out, and we'll take care of you. I don't think you're going to die." And once I heard that, I said, okay, I'm in, because everybody else was just trying to make me comfortable. And people talking about different hospices. And so as soon as they said, we can take care of you, and if Sloan Kettering's got a great reputation, it was out on the East Coast and didn't have any family out East. But, I jumped on a plane, and, I've been here since. So it's like you said, came here for other reasons, but my heart is definitely still out west.
Can you, if you don't mind, sharing with the listeners the type of cancer you had? I know you said. Yeah,
absolutely.
I kind of describe it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was crazy. So synovial sarcoma, and typically that presents in maybe like the thigh area, and it will grow to the size of like a softball before anybody even notices. It grows really quick, and it metastasizes to the lungs almost immediately. And so that's why there aren't too many survivors of synovial sarcoma. And when I had it sitting on a nerve under my foot. So imagine if it's in plantar fascia area, yes. But if you're standing on your foot, it's like right in the middle. you're standing on it and it's pushing up against the nerve, trust me, you know something's there. It's like it's got like a rock, like in your shoe or something. Like something's there. And so that's what it was for me. I mean, and I would go to podiatrist after podiatrist, and they would try telling me it was bone spurs or anything, plantar fasciitis, anything but cancer. I mean, that was the furthest thing that they were thinking. And luckily for me, I had an uncle in Philadelphia, actually, that was a radiologist. And he told me after about a year, he said, how come no one's giving you a scan, an MRI? And I said, what do I know? I said, and I actually started going back and asking for MRIs, and they said, no, you don't need an MRI. You don't need that. We're just going to give you this shot, that shot.
Because your age, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so I gave it so my uncle finally says, just come out to my hospital in Philadelphia and we'll do an MRI, immediately. So that's exactly what I did. And within, I remember a couple days, they called me, they had sent the biopsy actually off to Walter Reed. And it came back as cancerous. And they sent it to Walter Reed because I remember him telling me, he's like, there's no way that you've got cancer. We found there's something, but there's no way. But yeah, they sent it out to Walter Reed and it came back. It was cancerous. And even though it was in such a strange place for it to be, it was miraculous because it was still small enough. It didn't have a chance to grow to that softball size where it didn't metastasize, fortunately, and it stayed local.
Wow.
And at that point, he's the one that said, go to Sloan Kettering. Again, I was looking to stay local, and I had all these other oncologists, but he was able to get me into Sloan Kettering. And then once I spoke to that oncologist, and then again he told me that he could save me. That was music to my ears.
Of course.
The major challenge came for me, though, my second battle. Within my second year anniversary of being cancer-free, it came back. I had that similar feeling in my foot where I just couldn't stand for more than 30 to 60 seconds without feeling super sharp pain. And it was very familiar pain, and went back to the oncologist and said it's back. And we took some more scans. Sure enough, there was a local recurrence, and I ended up after that surgery and doing chemo. And after my second round of chemo, they basically suggested I remain an inpatient for the majority of that year because I was getting such bad reactions to the chemo. And so even after they would send me home, I would just get neutropenic and end up back in the hospital, whether into a nosebleed that just wouldn't stop or just something, high fever. Or I would just be right back in the hospital, within 48 hours, so they would just basically say, just stay here. And so while I was in Sloan Kettering, again, I'm from LA. And in fact, back in 96, actually in 95, when I was a senior in high school, I was getting signatures for Prop 215 because it was cool. I wasn't the biggest activist in the world, but as a senior in high school, there are not too many other part-time jobs that are cooler than that. And so I didn't have a stigma really to cannabis. My family didn't have a stigma to cannabis.
Oh, nice.
We were part of legacy cultivation operations as well back in California. And so, having access to cannabis and being around cannabis wasn't an issue when I was going through my cancer treatments. But that time at Sloan Kettering where I was inpatient, it got to the point I wasn't able to get out of bed. I mean, it was so bad. I remember just wanting to just stop. And I said to my oncologist one day, I said, "Are you killing me with this chemo?" And he said to me, "Well, we're taking you to the brink of death, but you did sign off on that." And I said, "Well, I remember signing all those papers and I remember us having that conversation, but I didn't think you were serious. And I believe you now, and if I could take it back, let's take it back. I want to stop." And luckily, right before I quit, someone gives me an article on Marinol. And I hand this article, right, in Time magazine to my oncologist defiantly saying, here, if I can, get Marinol, if you can prescribe me this cannabis in a pill, basically, I'll stay. And they looked at me and they said, you know what, we've never prescribed it to anyone here yet, but it's not going to hurt you. Sure, let's find a pharmacy that has it. And they've got a pharmacy in house at Sloan Kettering, but they didn't stock Marinol at that point. And so there was one pharmacy in Manhattan that had it. And when they got me Marinol, I remember I was back to my old self. I was telling jokes. I was having friends come by to watch Monday Night Football and making sure they brought wings, and these friends were looking at me like, how are we looking at the same person? You were on your deathbed a few days ago. And I said, nothing's changed other than Marinol. So as far as I know, I'm still on my deathbed, but I'm okay with that, And what happened was, we're learning today whether or not that had any kind of apoptosis, actual death of the cancer cells as a result, maybe not. But what we do know is, at least anecdotally, is that it allowed me to continue on with my chemo and with their protocol. And I was eating again, and I was feeling, good again, which we know psychologically, emotionally, going through chemo doesn't take its toll on the body. It takes its toll emotionally, big time. I was always somebody that, and still am, somebody that likes to be a giver, likes to be a helper, likes to be someone that contributes, to others and to society. And being in a hospital bed, you can't do any of those things. In fact, you're quite the opposite. You're just on the receiving end and taking mostly, and it's very uncomfortable. And so having Marinol in my system and again, because I couldn't medicate with any other form of cannabis, and luckily for me, the Marinol did have efficacy. I'm sure some people in your audience are thinking to themselves, didn't I read that Marinol doesn't have efficacy and doesn't really work? Well, it worked for me. So it does work for some people, and others it doesn't. It's like most cannabis these days, it's still trial and error, right? But it worked for me, and it sparked a passion in me. I had roommates at Sloan Kettering. I was on a pediatric floor because my cancer was a pediatric cancer. I'm sitting there sleeping with as roommates with 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds, and unfortunately, plural, right? They were moving on, unfortunately, to heaven. They weren't going home, right? And I'm saying to myself, how is this possible? How am I still here, right? Number one. And number two, why am I watching Cheech and Chong? And why am I watching, having munchies? Why am I watching Monday Night Football? Why am I enjoying my time here? And these kids, my roommates are suffering. Like, what's going on? And I just wanted to understand what medical cannabis meant. And it was a paradigm shift because, to me, again, coming from California and really, having a pretty good understanding of the legacy cannabis industry or cannabis, community, we understood what medical laws meant. It meant keeping us out of jail, or if you were lucky, right? Because they were still and still are, putting people away. But it was a way for us to do things, as legally as we could, right?
Exactly.
But
yes.
Here I was as a cancer patient, going from I wasn't eating, right, and I wasn't laughing, that's for sure, to eating wings and telling jokes again. And it was like if the only thing different was cannabis, synthetic, not synthetic. Again, we're going to learn. We can have that debate. It worked for me. I believe there are two distinct tracks. There is a medical track. There is an adult use track. They're both fine. We're going to find that products, and molecules are from the plant are better for other tracks, for one's better for the pharma side and the medical side, and one's better for the adult use recreational side. But one thing's for sure, cannabis is all good. You know what I mean? And it helps people, and it helps adults, and it helps children. And It's a shame that, that it became politicized, and it's a shame that, cannabis and not just THC, but, its cousin, the hemp plant, right, got penalized for it as well. And as a result, society lost, right? I mean, it wasn't just, patients, but, we now have, the amount of waste, and plastic, that's filling our oceans. I see a future where, that goes away because of hemp, right? So I'm glad that we're seeing the light, and I'm glad that I could play, a small role in this cannabis industry, in this cannabis economy. But most importantly, my passion is really helping patients understand, helping people understand that cannabis, it's okay to talk about. It's a plant, and there's nothing wrong with it. People don't overdose on cannabis, but they sure overdose on opiates and other meds that, we're being fed by mainstream, medicine today. So it's important to have the conversation, and I'm really thankful that we're having it today.
What a story. Wow.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can you explain to the listeners, some of our listeners they know a lot about cannabis, and some are curious, so that's why they're listening. Can you just explain what Marinol is versus, CBD?
Mm-hmm.
So
Marinol it's made in a lab, right? And it is a single molecule. It's THC. So it's the THC isolate, but it's man-made, right? It's synthetic. And so some people will argue that for cannabis to have an effect, to have its true medicinal effect, there has to be an entourage effect, which would mean that all the cannabis molecules and cannabinoids and flavonoids and terpenes and all that good stuff are presented at once. And I'm sure that there's, a lot of truth to that. But I believe that in certain cases, you don't.
Absolutely.
And I've seen
I agree.
Marinol,
I agree.
and another form of Marinol is dronabinol, same thing, just different name, are prescribed today in hospitals around the world, not just for cancer, but for AIDS patients and other patients that need an appetite, or for patients that are suffering from depression. It's really it's miraculous what it can do on those, both for the appetite and both, like I said, for someone's emotional stability. And we're going to learn. I mean, we couldn't learn because, in the United States, the government didn't allow the research to take place if it was for positive research, right? But we're going to learn now whether or not, like I said, there was actually any medicinal benefit on the side of killing the cancer. What we've seen from some research in Israel, for example, is that certain strains of cannabis can actually cause cancer cells for the cancer cells to cause suicide, in a sense. That's what apoptosis is, to cut off the blood supply to itself. And so it's almost ironic, right? I felt I was sort of committing suicide because of the chemo that I was taking. And here it might have been that the cannabis that I was taking had the exact opposite effect and was, causing the cancer to commit suicide. But how cool would that be?
Wow.
So it really is, it's an amazing plant that, so again, it's synthetic. There's room for synthetics in cannabis. It's a lot. It's less expensive. It takes less time to produce, and we can produce singular singular cannabinoids that way as well. And in a pharma type environment where, in Western medicine, we're very accustomed to having very specific doses,
Yes.
right, of an ingredient. Whereas, Eastern medicine philosophy, that wasn't the case. And it doesn't mean one's any better or one's any worse. But I don't know if we're going to retrain Western medicine to think a different way, or to go back to thinking the way they used to prior to dosing. But the only way to truly get there is likely going to be through synthetic. That said, there's still so much pharmacological use and efficacy from cannabinoids from the plant. It's just going to be a lot more difficult to have consistency that way. I think there's going to be a lot of benefit when used in tandem, which we're starting to see as well.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I didn't even think about it like that, to use it in tandem for if you do need something maybe for the entourage effect, but then the doctors would feel a bit more comfortable dosing something that's consistent, so they can kind of know, what everything is coming from. Interesting.
Exactly.
That was one of the issues we were having with our son, was making sure we got consistent product. I mean, we would purchase an oil, it would work for a month, then the following month when we're ready to refill, it doesn't have the same effect. Now, the seizures is an uptick. And when we contact the company and say, hey, look, what's going on? It seems like my son's having more seizures. We said, did anything change? Oh, well, you were getting one particular strain. We ran out of that strain, so now we had to use a different strain. It's like, you can't do that because we kind of count on you like it's a medicine, even though we're able to order it, not need to get a prescription. So there's a fine line now with that, because as a company that's just producing oils and selling them online, if a family's dependent on it because it's cost-effective to a certain extent, without a prescription, then you would have to be consistent, because if not, you're forcing the FDA to relook at everything and say, you know what, you guys can't really sell this for medical use, or if people cannot be using it for medical use.
Yeah, like especially serious conditions such as epilepsy. So we did run into that. And the plant itself, it's a plant. So like when you grow strawberries, not every strawberry is the same size. It's going to be
unless
a variation.
Unless you're Monsanto.
Right.
One big strawberry. That's it.
That's right.
But so tell me, how did you form Tress Capital with Asher? Like, how did you guys meet?
Yeah, so great question. So so as I mentioned, right, my passion was sparked, and I wanted to do everything I could to further the credibility of, cannabis, the legitimacy of this cannabis plant. And I mean, anybody I could speak with, I would. So I was reaching out to everybody that that had ever done any research or written a paper on cannabis that I could find on the internet. I was finding out their contact info and reaching out to Alan Shackelford, Bonnie Goldstein, Rafi Meshulam in Israel. I mean, everybody, right? Bill Levine, everybody. And everybody was very gracious and would take time and point me in the right direction and show me where I could learn what I was looking to learn. And sure enough, in 2010, 6 licenses are awarded in Jersey. And the cultivation manager tapped for that job calls me one day and says, the 2 ladies that had been awarded the license have brought a couple of groups in that were supposed to bring the capital, and for one reason or another that it didn't happen. And I'm pretty sure that you can bring in the capital, A. B, you can help me with the operations because we can bring out the network from California. And C, haven't you been talking about, wanting to bring forth this new industry and really push cannabis legitimacy forward, and this is your chance, Dave. And that's exactly what I did. I brought in a partner that had experience in, believe it or not, in creating nuclear isotopes for MRI, and so he did have the background, the medical, clean room background that would be required to build out this type of infrastructure, really under the noses of, the pharmaceutical industry in New Jersey, and understanding that in a decade, which is actually now, right, from that point, this is what would be most likely looked at as how to cultivate, right? Not, which was an automated clean room facility, essentially, right? And not, what you were seeing back at, in 2010, which was more like, scaled up basement grows, if that makes sense, right? If you went out to Colorado or some other places early, in this, early in this new cannabis economy, that's what you were seeing. Rarely would you see anything, technologically advanced. And so that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I wanted to build. So probably spent a little too much money and spent a little too much time doing it, but we built it out. And to this day, it's really been an example for a lot of the industry on the East Coast. So it's a great facility. When that was built and completed, I had quite a few high net worth friends and colleagues that wanted to invest in similar operations, or just invest in the cannabis industry, and they trusted me and were ready to invest with whatever my next project was going to be. And so I started going out to, this is now like 2011 or so. So you mentioned where we met at a conference. So in 2011, that's when the conferences were really just getting off the ground, right? Mm-hmm. Some of these conferences today, you'll have 10,000 plus, right? And some of the bigger ones, 30,000 plus, right? Yeah. Early, there were maybe, if you had 300 people at an event, you were happy. And so you'd have to think, right? I mean, if you're someone like me, which is sort of like a natural networker, I'm a people person, 300 people, it's not that difficult to get through the room. Yeah. And so I was sort of growing with the nucleus of the industry, because I was going to all these conferences, I was joining all the associations, all the industry associations rather. And I remember after one trip to Arizona, after looking at a cultivation, I had a friend of mine was an investment banker, and he says to me, he says, "What's going on?" And I said, "I'm looking at all these great deals." And he says, "Yeah, why aren't you doing any of them?" And I said, "I don't really have a finance background, and if I'm going to start putting millions of dollars to work of really, friends' money, I wanted to ensure that, I'd be able to do it responsibly." And to me, that meant bringing in a partner that really had a finance background. And so he said, "I recommend you meet this guy, Asher. He is somebody that is an impact investor." Right. And I'm like, "What is an impact investor?" He's like, he likes, if he's going to make an investment, he wants to do it not just for the bottom line, but he wants to ensure that it's having a greater impact on society and the greater good, And so I said, "Great, let's meet." And he shared my vision of wanting to make an impact, and for me, that was certainly on the credibility side of cannabis, obviously, but and on the, sure, I would love to one day see cancer, be eradicated as a result of cannabis. But my main goal has always been to, like I said, it's the cannabis plant is all good, right? And so what that means for an industry, especially in the beginning, is support, and it's not just on the pharma side, it's whatever is happening, right? So at first, right now, it's, especially in California, it's infrastructure and ensuring that the legs of the industry are supported. And he shared that vision. And thirdly, he wanted to see that this were like any other investment firm for any other sector, for any other industry, right? And that we're going to treat this, talking about cannabis, dealing with cannabis, no differently than any other commodity or again, any other industry. And that's what we built. And he brought this, institutional style, to the cannabis industry. With my network already being, again, part of that, knowing a lot of people and that we're already part of the legacy industry in California. What I was, especially early on and still today, is sort of a bridge between the two worlds, right? Because you have to imagine a lot of the Wall Street guys coming in, and maybe some still are, view that legacy industry not in the kindest of light, right? And to say it nicely. and on the other side, right, you've got a lot of legacy market not wanting, these Wall Street guys to come in that know nothing about cannabis and don't appreciate what, decades and decades of advocacy and passion, for the plant that a lot of people have had before them and didn't necessarily respect that road. That you had investment going back and forth between those groups, right? Yeah. And that was a recipe for disaster. And I saw that, very early on. And I said, all right, this is going to be my place in this industry. I'm going to be the bridge between these two sides, because there are a lot of great people, that already exist in this industry that need support. And there are a lot of good people to come that need support. And there are a lot of great investors, right, that have a lot to offer, that aren't going to, they're not going to get a fair shake, and vice versa, right? So I want to make sure, as best as I can, that I paired up the capital with the right opportunities, right? And able to take my family's capital and just expand on that with like I said, with this group of high net worth individuals that trusted me with their capital, to really invest it the right way and set an example for other investors, that want to invest in the industry, and are like-minded, that want to make a greater impact. And this way, it's not just about, the bottom line. And especially, early on in the industry, that's needed, because especially if you're investing on the private side like we are, you're not looking for liquidity, right, within any time soon, period, right? I mean, you're not expecting that kind of a return. But what we are expecting is the impact, right? We are measuring the impact. And what we do love seeing is, when our operators are able to give back to their communities, or when they do have hiring policies where we see the equality, we see the diversity at the C level, and support that. We, or we're, making investments into companies, that are tracking the waste, that the industry is creating, and not to point out in a negative way, but to highlight it and then say, okay, how can we make this better, right? And or a lot of, we operate, as I say, on this, limited social license in this industry, but the amount of energy that it can take, some of the states force cultivators to grow indoors, right? And especially on the East Coast, right? And maybe that's needed because you can't grow outdoors, right? But if you can't cross state lines, right, we're not going to get it from the West Coast, where it probably should be grown outdoors. And then, consumers and patients don't have to pay these exorbitant costs, right? But if you're growing indoors and we're consuming all this energy to grow the plant a very specific way indoors, well, that can be very wasteful. And granted, now we're seeing LEDs, and that's one way to mitigate the amount of energy that's being used. but we're also seeing many other platforms like Ronetics, which is in our portfolio. That's helping cultivators really grow and maximize their efficiency and keep their energy down and ensure that they're able to grow at maximum sustainability, while of course getting the yield that they need as the operator in order to succeed as an operator in this space and pay the taxes that they've got to pay. So it's the support for that infrastructure that we're here for, that will really further the industry, if that makes sense.
It does.
That's what I'm here for. And so, that's, it's a little bit of a long answer, but Asher really brings in that financial background that he was on Wall Street for over a decade before before we met. And officially, that's Tress. His last name is Tropy. I'm Hess, so we get Tress.
Great.
And it's easy, right? In the .com world, you want to keep it as short as possible. So Tress is great,
Oh, that's awesome. So let me ask a question: this, as it relates to CBD in New York, which hasn't been clear. I don't think CBD is clear, period. But people are heavily involved in it. Do you have a CBD company that's in your portfolio? And how do you see it playing out in the East Coast in the CBD industry?
So we do. Okay. So we have companies. I'll give you an example, like Infusion Biosciences. Infusion Biosciences has an extraction technique, an IP really, that they discovered over 30 years ago when they were producing a very specific cholesterol medicine from a lipid, from a plant that was like cannabis, a lipid, a fat that needed to be bioavailable in human beings, which are made mostly of water, right? So that doesn't work. And that's why we were talking earlier, right? That's why a lot of times emulsifiers are brought into the equation, or, there's nano-emulsification involved. There's nano-encapsulation, involved. There's some way to take the lipid and make it, polar, make it bioavailable. And Infusion Biosciences came to me, I would say at this point, almost 4 years ago, and said, we don't know what we have here, but we've got this bottle that we've extracted, this tincture that we extracted using this IP, and we think that it is strain specific, and we think that you are going to feel it in under 2 minutes, and that it will be out of your system in an hour. Okay, and this works for if it were again, it's strain specific. So if it's a plant that is high in THC, it'll be a high THC tincture. If it is an ACDC plant, for example, right, or any other that is a high CBD, low THC plant, well, that's what you'll get in the extract. There is no post-production involved. There is no nano-encapsulation, and it is no emulsification involved whatsoever. And that's exactly what happened. I felt it within 2 minutes of taking it, and within about an hour, I wanted more, right, to get rid of whatever was ailing me. And I had other people around me try it out as well. One example would be an uncle of mine that was also going through chemo, and he unfortunately was having a lot of mucus associated with it as a reaction, and would just be carrying around a box of Kleenex wherever he goes. And so I said, here, take a little of this and some orange juice or whatever. So gave him a couple drops, and immediately no tissues. And 45 minutes later to an hour later, boom, tissue box. And I said, let me give you a couple more drops. Give him a couple more drops, takes the drink. Again, no tissues for another hour. And I'm doing this over and over again. I said, well, it worked for me. It worked for him. It worked for another guy that has a migraine. It worked for the other guy that's got Crohn's. This works, right? And again, with no, emulsification and some of the issues that, can somehow, like, I think we were talking about offline, whether it's, a different type of, sunflower oil or other agents that they're having to, ingredients that they're having to mix into the tincture. You don't need that with an Infusion Biosciences product. And so it's taken a number of years now to understand the science behind it. I mean, for me, it was one of those where, I pushed the golden button on that one. It was a game changer. I still believe it is probably one of the biggest game changers that I've come across in period in my history with cannabis. And I've been around cannabis a long time now. It's something this approachable. It just doesn't exist outside of Infusion Biosciences. I mean, I've seen a number of tinctures that, have a challenge with taste, have a challenge with shelf life, and, as I said, have a challenge with ingredients and what those ingredients do for the patient. And even sometimes, how it is metabolized, right? And there was actually a warning. There's a warning with GW and Epidiolex. When you take too much CBD, depending on what medication a patient is taking, it affects their CYP450 and how they metabolize. Period. Right.
Yes.
And once those enzymes, if you mess with those enzymes, if a patient is taking a medication that requires those enzymes to sort of be that final ingredient, right? Which a lot of times that's how medicines are made. They're made with that in mind, that the CYP450 enzymes are going to react, and then that's how, right? That's how the medicine, becomes bioavailable in our bodies. But if you're taking too much CBD, it's a CYP450 inhibitor, and so that could be challenging for some patients. And so, boom, checks that box, right? And so again, I've never seen anything like it. And so we pushed that golden buzzer. It was early in that again, we're just now figuring out, how to get it into the hands of consumers. But we'll be seeing that very shortly on the THC side in California. And in Washington State, and then on the CBD side everywhere, because fortunately CBD from the hemp plant can cross state lines, and so they can make products specifically with certain strains. So, for example, Osiris or Nina, if your son has success with a very specific formulation, we could help you get that formulation tested, right? And you say, okay, it's from that specific strain. So, all right, for whatever reason, Girl Scout cookies, I made up the strain, right? Mm-hmm. Girl Scout cookies has this specific formulation. Well, now a lab like SC Labs, which, was one of our first investments, we could understand what exactly, what is the profile, right? Because
yes.
The name is not really going to help us, right? Because they could grow Girl Scout cookie, at the farm next door, or forget the farm, it could be the same farm, and it's just in the plant, the one plant over, and it's going to have a slightly different, makeup, right? If you put it under the microscope, under the GPLC. So it's important to understand what the profile is. We'll get that, and then you can have that going forward if it's coming from a specific CBD hemp strain. That can cross state lines, right? And if it's extracted this way, well then you get all the benefits from that strain without having to reintroduce anything. Period. So to answer you, it's not a CBD CPG company that we have an investment in, but it is a company that is going to provide the ingredients to hopefully many CPG companies out there very, very soon. And then we have a media company called Cannabis Now. And what we did with Cannabis Now is, after about 10 years of Cannabis Now being in publication. They started in 2010 out of Berkeley. They did what Elle magazine did. Elle magazine started Elle Decor, right? And that's for their readers to go pick up, furniture or whatever they're seeing out of Elle, go find at Elle Decor. Well, we wanted to do the same thing with cannabis now. We wanted the 4 million plus followers that were reading Cannabis Now to be able to find what they're reading about and getting excited about. And so we opened a CBD wellness store in Los Angeles, right where LA and Beverly Hills converge. And we built a 4,000 square foot, like I said, CBD wellness store and education center where patients and customers can come in and understand what is limonene, what is, so what are the terpenes, right? What is pine? What is myrcene? What's linalool? And what kind of effects they have? And they can smell it we had True Terpenes, had the terpene wall in there, and they were really experiential, right? And can understand which CBD product was great for them or their pet, and why, right? And if it was a cosmetic they were looking for, or some or clothing, made from hemp, they could find it at the CBD wellness store, Cannabis Now's wellness store in LA. Unfortunately, it was looted on May 30th during the first day of protests for George Floyd.
I'm so sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. And so we were looted. It took about an hour or two to destroy months and months worth of work, but we're just reopening now, and it's obviously for pickup, curbside pickup. Now that California, LA in particular, is still a hot spot for COVID. We're just getting nailed left and right, but we're resilient, right? So we're going to keep pushing. But cancer. So we do have sources for CBD in the portfolio. It's not a CPG company itself, but it's a home for CBD, right? For CBD patients, for CBD brands to tell their story. And that's what Cannabis Now is. So, which is really in line with how we make investments. It's going to be, multi-tiered. It's not just, it's going to have those ripples, that really branch out into helping others. And it's 1 + 1 = 10, not 2.
Just to ask you on this point, thinking like as a futurist in this industry, where do you see the next big market? Like, because I know that California is the one that really started it off, and then now somewhat the East Coast. I don't know if it even has really taken off yet, the East Coast. I don't even think that's really, but where do you see the next moves that are going to happen? Like, where it's going to be like, okay, cannabis is definitely here to stay, or as hemp, and for that matter.
I'm hoping that it's New York. I'm seeing all the signs, the writings on the wall, as they say. They've lost now $7 billion plus in tax revenue due to COVID, and with the amount of tax revenue cannabis can bring in, they've hit $1 billion in places like Illinois, California, and other big states, and they'll do it in New York in no time. And over time it'll multiply, and the tax dollars go to the school systems and to the homeless and all these great community programs. And that's been part of the holdup in New York, is figuring out the social equity program, and B, where the taxes are going to be spent. But I think they're almost ready to make some announcements. I'm very hopeful that they're going to come up with a system that maybe looks closer to an Illinois. I mean, they haven't gotten it perfect either, but it's been one of the smoother rollouts of the states in recent years that we've seen. I don't think any state has gotten it perfect yet, and I'm not a believer. Some believe if you don't get it perfect the first time, it's so hard to change. So just don't put a program out. And I hear that philosophy, but there are just so many great things that also happen once you start putting a legal framework into play. I mean, just the amount of jobs alone, we're hitting 300,000 cannabis jobs. I mean, that's more than computer programmers.
Yes,
I mean,
true.
who would have thought that, right?
It's amazing.
But that's real. That's real. If you think about it, I mean, how many computer programmers do you know out there? Lots of them, right? And then there are more people working in cannabis. I mean, it's a real, it's an opportunity for people to make an honest living and feel good about it and help others. And it doesn't matter what background a person comes from. There's a home for them in cannabis, and especially for entrepreneurs, now's the time to really push forward. It's an industry that is supportive of entrepreneurs, and it's a good time to be in the industry right now.
Oh, okay.
So I think New York. I think New York is next.
Okay, let me ask you, because I know like you stated, you've been in the industry for quite some time. Do you see I mean, you probably know the answer to this question, or you may not. Is there a diversity issue in this industry? Because I hear it a lot, and I do see it.
Yes,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
I think the number is like 4-ish%, where you've got non-white, as non-male white, right, as at the C level, period. And it's interesting because we're and this is actually a good time to do it. We're looking to hire right now. We're looking to hire an investor relations person, and we put a call out. And I'm so frustrated because I said to Asha the other day, I said, why am I seeing men, and white men, honestly, right? I want to see some more diversity here in the applications that you're sending over. And he's like, Dave, 85-90% of the applications that are coming through are white males. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for me as somebody that wants to hire and that wants to, that wants to, enable, right, for a diverse workplace, for Tress, but to push that forward in the industry. So I think we need to encourage more people of all shapes, colors, sizes to be okay with cannabis. I mean, if you think about it, right, there might be reluctance also, right, from certain people, from certain backgrounds to join the cannabis industry right now, maybe because for so long they've been persecuted, right?
Absolutely.
And maybe you're thinking, is this a trick? I don't know,
Yeah.
and maybe not coming out. I don't know, but we try to do, like I said, SC Labs for us, CEO is Black. Jeff Gray is an amazing CEO for SC Labs, and does it push the needle? I mean, it a little, right? And I'd like to see more of it. And for Infusion Biosciences, the CEO is Indian American. And again, does it push the needle? Are all of our CEOs non-white? No, and it's not by design, right? But I would love to see more. Eugenio Garcia, non-white CEO, Cannabis Now. And it's, it wasn't by design. It was, but we love that is what shows up, almost, even that it was not by design. I mean, it just kind of says sort of who we are as Tress. We are, colorblind, we're culture blind. I mean, we want you to have to be in this for the right reasons for cannabis, and that's what we see. We see, we see green, but different kind of green. People usually refer to money. We're seeing cannabis. The cannabis plant, and that's what we see. And but yeah, I am. I actually spent a lot of time trying to encourage diversity, not just in cannabis, but in the leadership within cannabis, right? And being vocal about your leadership. And when I do see those leaders, I love helping them have a voice, right? And part of that is whatever webinars we're a part of nowadays that we can't go to the conferences when it was conferences and now webinars, trying to promote equality and diversity, and showcase that in our industry, I think is helpful, and I try and do that. But I think it's also just telling the story and encouraging everybody to sort of place their brick in this industry and building this industry, and understanding that's what this is about, and not to be worried. And are there people in this industry that aren't as open-minded or like-minded? I'm sure, but I personally know of many that are, and are very welcoming in the space. And I'm hopeful that we keep doing our part as Tress, and keep making sure we associate with the right people. And I think ultimately we will begin to push that needle and see better representation, from all cultures in cannabis. I mean, that's really what this plant is about. It's one of the greatest things that it teaches us, aside from the medicinal benefits. I've always said that, other than maybe music or, a good meal, cannabis is one of those things that can bring people with different backgrounds, different cultures, different political beliefs, religious beliefs together, at a table and laugh and enjoy each other's company. Why? Because they're enjoying cannabis together. And cannabis can do that, not just, as, on emotionally, but it can also provide that, that even playing field for everybody. And I think that's something unique, really, to cannabis that this industry offers.
Yeah, we've noticed that with us as my wife and I, in that it empowered us to make certain decisions, to take control of our son's well-being, and not to have it a one-sided conversation when we go to his doctor's appointments. It's a conversation that we're both having. So it's not a matter of, we'll take what the doctor says and go home. We're coming to them and sharing with them what we're experiencing and what we have in mind and how can they help us. So that's one of the things I did appreciate about the plan. It empowered us to, take, hold of ourselves and our families. And hearing your story, and that's what it's done for you, and look where it's taken you. So that's awesome. Now, my last question for you, this is going to be an interesting one, because we see it happening, and I think you may have an idea where I'm going with this. How do you see blockchain playing a role in the hemp and cannabis industry?
Good question. So from what I've been hearing, right, through the grapevine, right, over maybe the last year or two with blockchain and cannabis, is that it's too early. Not that it's the wrong platform, right, or part of the platform, but it's too early, in that, there are too many unknowns in blockchain right now, and that on top of too many unknowns in cannabis is too much to handle, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's why we haven't seen the acceptance that we might have thought we'd be seeing, especially in a compliance-heavy, regulatory-heavy industry, non-banked industry as cannabis. You would think that this is the obvious home for blockchain, but yeah, the reluctance over the past few years has really been as a result of just almost too many uncertainties that are yet to be, written in cannabis. And I think once they iron those things out, then we'll be ready for blockchain. I believe almost like LEDs, right? LEDs now in a cultivation, it's like everyone's using LED, right? But 3-4 years ago, everybody was saying, you know what, it's too early. We're just trying to get dialed in. We just need to get up. We don't care what we just need to get up and running. LEDs aren't proven yet, but now it's almost everybody's using LED. I think fast forward 5-6 years from now, everybody will be using blockchain. So it's just a timing thing. Versus will it or will it not be here? It'll be here.
Wow, I can't wait. Well, David, thank you very much for sharing your passion with the plan, and also what it's done for you and changing your life for the better and keeping you healthy and safe. And now that you're in the investment aspect of it, and you're investing in companies that are also doing great things in the industry, I would say thank you.
Helping people, yes.
Yeah. So if anybody wanted to reach out to you and apply for that job,
yeah, definitely.
How would they reach you?
Out? Yeah, either can find us on LinkedIn or go to our website, www.tresscapital.com. They can also go to Tress.io if that's easier. Tresscapital.com or on LinkedIn. You'll find me directly, and go ahead and follow. If you're on the website, you'll be able to find out how to apply. And I look forward to, or you can also email me, dhess@tresscapital.com, dhess@tresscapital.com, and please, send those resumes in, and I'd love to hear from anybody that's looking to do some investment relations.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you very much again, David.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, definitely. Tell Asher we said
My
hello.
pleasure.
And I hope to see you guys soon. I mean, we once this thing is over, we can do lunch.
Absolutely. Nina, Osiris, thank you so much. And thank you for both of you for what you're doing for our industry and helping people as well.
Definitely. That's what this whole
Thank you
industry is
very
about.
much.
It's helping, right?
Exactly.
All right, David. Thank you again. And take care, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in another episode of
Love and Cannabis.
I'm Osiris Stephens.
And I'm Nina Simmons.
Be strong.
And stay empowered.